24th January, Saint Francis de Sales, Bishop and Doctor of the Church. Saint Francis de Sales was born to a noble family in Switzerland on August 21st, 1567. Francis was both intelligent and gentle. From a very early age, he desired to serve God. He knew for years he had a vocation to the priesthood, but kept it from his family. His father wanted him to enter a career in law and politics. In 1580, Francis attended the University of Paris, and at 24 years old, he received his doctorate in law at the University of Padua. All the time, he never lost his passion for God. He studied theology and practiced mental prayers, but kept quiet about his devotion. To please his father, he also studied fencing and riding. God made his will clear to Francis one day while he was riding. Francis fell from his horse 3 times that day. Every time he fell, the sword came out of the case, and every time it came out, the sword and case came to rest on the ground in the shape of the Christian cross. After much discussion and disagreement from his father, Francis was ordained to the priesthood in the Diocese of Geneva. During the time of the Protestant Reformation, Francis lived close to Calvinist territory. He decided he should lead an expedition to bring the 60,000 Calvinists back to the Catholic Church. For 3 years, he marched through the countryside, had doors slammed in his face and rocks thrown at him. In the bitter winters, his feet froze so badly they bled as he tramped through the snow. Francis' unusual patience kept him working. No one would listen to him. No one would even open their door. So, Francis found a way to get under the door. He wrote out little pamphlets to explain true Catholic doctrine and slipped them under the doors. This is one of the first records we have of religious tracts being used to communicate the true Catholic faith to people who had fallen away from the church. The parents wouldn't come to him, so Francis went to the children. When the parents saw how kind he was as he played with the children, they began to talk to him. By the time Francis returned home, it is believed he brought 40,000 people to the Catholic Church. He forged wonderful alliances with Pope Clement XVIII and Henry IV of France, and in 1601, Francis joined Henry IV on a diplomatic mission. He was to give Lenten sermons at the Chapel Royal. Henry grew attached to Francis and saw him as a rare bird who was devout, knowledgeable, and a gentleman. In 1602, Bishop Granier died and Francis was consecrated Bishop of Geneva. He only set foot in the city of Geneva twice. Once, when the Pope sent him to try to convert Calvin's successor, Beza, and another when he traveled through it. In 1604, Francis took one of the most important steps in his life, the step toward extraordinary holiness and mystical union with God. In Dijon, Francis saw a widow listening closely to his sermon. A woman he had seen already in a dream. Jane de Chantal was a dedicated Catholic Christian on her own, as Francis was, But it was only when they became friends they began to become saints. Years after working with Jane, he made up his mind to form a new religious community. In 1610, he founded the Order of Visitation. Francis was overworked and often ill because of his constant load of preaching, visiting, and instruction. Even catechizing a deaf man so he could take First Communion. He believed the first duty of a bishop was spiritual direction. Francis insisted that every Christian was called to holiness and sanctity, lived within their own state of life. In holding that belief, he reflected the teaching of Jesus and the early church fathers. Francis laid the groundwork for the teaching of the Second Vatican Council on what is now called the universal call to holiness. It reaffirms the teaching of Jesus and the early church that every baptized Christian is called to sanctity, no matter what their career or state in life. He believed the worst sin was to judge someone or to gossip about them. Even if we say we do it out of love, we are still doing it to look better ourselves. We should be as gentle and forgiving with ourselves as we should be with others. He died on December 28, 1622, after giving a nun his last word of advice, humility. Saint Francis de Sales was beatified on January 8, 1661, and canonized on April 19, 1665, by Pope Alexander VII. He is often featured with the heart of Jesus and a crown of thorns. In 1923, Pope Pius XI named Saint Francis de Sales the patron saint of Catholic writers and the Catholic press because of the tracts and books he wrote. He is also the patron saint of the deaf, journalists, adult education, and the Sisters of Saint Joseph.